Welcome to MSP Unplugged. I'm your host, Paco LeBron. This is the place to learn how to run your MSP, whether you're a nimble MSP or leading a team for the journey. This is the place for you. I'd like to introduce my partner in crime, Miss Nancy Henriquez, Head of Community over at MSP Unplugged. How are you today?
I'm doing great today here at PAX 8 Beyond and happy to be here.
Perfect. Well, we have a great interview for today. We're going to be highlighting yet another MSP here in the space, Mr. Ed Lukacs, CEO over at 2Fifteen Tech. Lucas, how are you today?
I'm outstanding. Thank you for asking.
Perfect. So why I called you by your last name, I have no idea, Ed, but you know what? This is what you get when you're recording live on location. But Ed, I appreciate you coming on. For us, we always love to hear the journey of an MSP, how you got to the space, and kind of, talk about some of the hiccups along the way. But before we kind of go into detail for that, why don't you talk about a little bit about how you kind of got started and what led you to 2Fifteen Tech?
Yeah, so I'm probably a little bit of a unique case. So I'm not the founder, right? But I came into the company slightly after it was founded. In fact, I was one of the originals. And what's going to really throw you off is I was supposed to be an equity play.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, of course, it didn't naturally progress in that direction. So for all those people that want to join a company and somebody promised you something, get it in writing early. Right?
Good lesson learned,
yeah,
like number one.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so that lesson there took me to a point where I was given finally equity. I became a 30% partner in 2Fifteen Tech. And then, of course, worked my way to becoming 50-50. Now, let me tell you, you don't want to be 50-50. Right? It's really tough to make decisions. So if anybody looking for partners, understand somebody has to be designated.
Yeah.
And at the time, the partner was the CEO. However, uniquely, we were being very mismanaged. And until I had the opportunity for me to look at the books, also identified an opportunity. And so when that happened, I kind of said, hey, you know what? I'm going to run this company. So him and I had that conversation. Who's going to run as CEO? I picked up that role. And shortly thereafter, we had the conversation about if you're not going to work, we have to release your salary back to the business. So you can imagine, I'm going to tell you the hardest conversation to have is telling your partner you're firing.
Oh, talk about tension.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
At least you guys weren't married.
Yeah.
Because I've had that conversation before and we're no longer married.
Yeah.
Or in business together. So I can see how that goes.
There's a twofer on that one. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. You did. And so, in my path, eventually I did buy the company. This was about 2.5 years ago. And luckily my background's in business. I'm not a tech guy, just I'm more of a business guy. And I have really smart technicians. And that was fortuitous because we've gone from in the red to in the black in about 1.5 years.
Okay.
So I've only bought in about 2.5 years.
That's awesome. So you had your work cut out in the sense that not only did you have to get to a point of being able to manage the business, then go through the tension of firing that partner, which sometimes you got to do that. And then having to take the business from being in the red to in the black.
Yeah.
What would you say has been like the number one thing that you could attribute to now being at that level, being in the black?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I'll reiterate, forming a team was probably one of the biggest pieces. So even as I took the company and said, I'm going to have to downsize a little bit, I knew where to trim the fat early, right? Mm-hmm. Who wasn't effective? Who wasn't on the boat? And that's a really hard thing to do. Is really find who's the talent and then say to yourself, okay, I have to let these people go.
Yeah.
But I'm a true believer in always saying I'm going to do what's best for the business, right? And that even includes myself. If I'm not delivering, then, I got to take myself out. And so that's something I always tell people is like, you want to bring it to where you want it to be, start with you, your team, and then start to build.
Now, in regards to, with growing pains, right, and being able to understand business acumen and looking at the P&L and the balance sheet, you mentioned something about stabilizing the business, right, and being able to look at, and obviously payroll is the number one highest cost to a business, right? When looking at something of that decision making and you've gotten over that hurdle, what's the next step in regards to trying figuring out, all right, we're on this path. We got a little bit of reserves in the bank now that we don't have to incur any costs. What's the next step for efficiency, operational improvements, et cetera, to get to where you said being able to take that in such a short time frame of you being able to take it back over?
No, I really appreciate that, Paco. I'm a true believer in frameworks, right? And so even to the part where operationally in the technical side of the house, most MSPs function early on in the same sphere, right? They have a help desk. They have some form of consulting. We call it VCIO or something like that. They do quarterlies or strategic business reviews and so forth. Once you create that framework, and then like you're saying, how did I get back into the black and how do I continue that? So once I brought it into the black, I said, okay, now I need a framework. At the current moment, because we're still a small MSP, right? I started focusing now on the profit first concept to really say, let me think about how we're utilizing our revenues and best implement a solution that's one, fair to myself and allows me to give to the employees what they deserve, right? And so that was how creating that framework is actually start the momentum for planning out the next subsequent years. I like to always say I do a 10-year, 3-year, 1-year plan. I'm always in the first year of a 3-year plan, right? So every year I'm just going through that iteration of 3 to get to where I want to be.
Yeah. Okay. Now,
there's so you've mentioned two books really that speak to the frameworks that you're working on. So Traction is one of them in the sense of the 10-year, 3-year, 1-year plan. Oh yeah. I'm very well versed. And then the other thing was Mike McCallow's Profit First, right? Also the author of The Pumpkin Plan. So if you haven't read any of those books, I highly recommend. What would you say was one of the hardest things to implement when you first started to kind of read some of these books and get into the frameworks of it?
Yeah. Each has their own challenges, but luckily when it comes to EOS, that is a collective, meaning the whole team has to get on board.
Oh yeah.
Whether you're developing rocks, right? However you want to plan that out. I'd say that's the most difficult because whatever you create, right, you have to do in conjunction with your leadership team and then say, this is what we're trying to accomplish. And if they're bought in, that means you got to have that vision, value statements, all that kind of stuff. Then effectively you can move forward from that. The profit first, that's on the back end. That's just mostly myself, right? But then I run quarterlies with my team to kind of get them on the same shoes of how are we performing? They have to be invested in the business, right? Because they want bigger paychecks. But
of course.
absolutely. And it has afforded those opportunities to the team because we're doing that. Because when they can see it, and they'll ask questions, all of a sudden now they can progress forward and say, okay, what do you need, Ed? And that's where it really comes into value.
Now, we've talked about Traction and Profit First, right? And then a detail we haven't gone over. So, Ed, what's the size of your MSP and how many employees do you have?
Great question. So we're a little uniquely different. We are Apple consultants.
Okay.
So we lead with Apple and Google Workspace, of course. And so as a Google Workspace partner.
Yep.
And so sometimes those numbers get a little edged out for us. Because when I look at, obviously, some Traction, I can say, okay, this is about my guidelines of when I need to hire and so forth. So we're a team of 5.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, which is to most people like, man, that's small. But I'm also a true believer in small units and highly effective people.
And so the reason I asked for that, so that those that are listening can understand on your experience of where you're talking from, for those that find it relevant and for their practice. And then 2, I think there's an important piece here, and this is the question I have for you, is, I'm always a true believer of employee experience always drives client experience. And so, by going through a stabilization period, being able to bring the company back into black, what were the initiatives that you did to ensure that your other teammates and team members, A, understood the mission of the business, and that two, that they knew that they were going to be taken care of, so long as A, they also were invested in the business because they felt like it was their business too.
Yeah. Oh, great question. So this was really interesting when it was very mismanaged, and we had some really poor results from that. The former partner actually had cut down wages, on other people and stuff. And I was actually amazed I was able to retain talent. But it's because if I say I'm going to do something, it's my promise. I'm going to do something. And so obviously those people that took cuts after we gotten through the storm, I gave them back what they deserved, and that helped frame that up as well. The other part too is when it came to the mission and so forth, I didn't do it by myself. Although the vision, we sat down and I said, hey, let's talk about where we want to go tomorrow, right? Do we want to be a la carte, everything, both operating systems? And then we kind of said, well, what are we good at? And by bringing the team in, and not even just leadership, everybody kind of got in there and just said, yeah, let's go this direction. I said, okay, let me frame it out, right? Ultimately, it's going to be on me.
Sure.
But in the end, if everybody's vested and they helped in that mission statement off of the vision that I have, and then all of a sudden they say, okay, here are the values that I believe in.
Yeah.
And I said, help me. And they were like, no, these are great. Oh, maybe we could say this, right? Because they build the culture. I don't. And that really helped us propel forward.
Yeah, that's something that's, I think, truly important a lot of the times, and it isn't really seen. And to Paco's point, that's, people feel that, right? Like whenever your employees are your first investors. They are your the first people that buy into your vision, to your idea, to where you're going to take the business. And if they don't believe it, they're not invested in the culture themselves, then your customers feel that too. And that's something that's very apparent. And I'm sure that you experienced both sides of that, seeing the difference, especially going from having a business that was mismanaged to then getting it in order, ultimately speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually, my actions help them also see, oh, this guy's vested into our success, right? Where they weren't seeing that before.
Yeah.
And that made more sense. And I'm a little spoiled, I'm not going to lie. Being an Apple company, I get employees from Apple, and Apple's got some of the best training for soft skills. So we can hit the ground running.
So that was actually going to be my next question in regards to, as you kind of overviewed the business and running through standardization is going to be a huge piece of that. And it sounded like, from being able to look at the mismanagement across all avenues, how, and we don't, for example, in our side, you always hear Microsoft, right? That's the big standardization practice, or Windows and things of that nature. Can you share a little bit about what the business has done to standardize across the platforms you've chosen, obviously Apple and Google, one or both, or I'll let you share on either one, and how had you led standardization for not only internally, but to your clients to help allow them for a great experience as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So the great part is if you start treating tech as a universal platform and not segmenting Windows to Apple, you have a lot more opportunity for success when you look at the bigger picture. Everything from security, compliance, and being an Apple-specific type of consultant, we really stay away from the FUD concept and just really want to sell on value, right? Much like Apple does. So that culture came from Apple and really pushed it on to our customers. Our customers have a certain expectation when it comes to Apple products.
Sure.
And we have to deliver in the same capacity. So that was one of those things where not only from an employee standpoint, knowing how we delivered, but then also from our constituents, right, our customers, they trust in our word. They know what we're talking about, right? We're out in the forefront of talking about Apple well before they can even do anything or see anything. And now with the advent of AI, and this is where it gets really interesting. So yesterday was WWDC, You may have heard more announcements
Yep.
about AI being implemented in.
The new Siri.
The new Siri, yeah. We've heard that a little bit before. So,
right.
you know, fingers crossed. But I see huge expectations from those ends. And this is where it starts to come to vendors, right? Where here we are at PAX 8, great vendor, particularly on the Microsoft side, right? And then for us, it's Apple and so forth. And so your vendors can really help steer you in the direction of success as well as a business owner.
Yeah.
So it's been lucrative for us in that sense.
Speaking of being here at PAX 8 Beyond, would you say that some of these conferences have been helpful to you? And if so, like what are some of the other conferences that have been helpful or meaningful for you in your business?
Absolutely. So for anybody who's looking whether they should go to conferences or they're making that question, believe me, I've gone to conferences out of the blue, out of my pocket, paid for it, went, everything else. Totally worth it. If you're a business owner, totally worth it. And I'll explain why. I've made a lot of rich contacts.
Mm-hmm.
People that I not only that are great people to meet and are invested in their industry and what they're trying to accomplish, but more importantly, I've made some great friends that actually some of them become customers. We try to help others even like deliver the Mac experience because like a hybrid environments, right? Yeah, and I love coming to these events because not only can I learn what they're focused on, what the industry is focused on, but then more importantly, I can sit there and say, hey, I got somebody I can call. I'm trying to figure something out, you know? Yeah. So I definitely would highly recommend any business owner go to those events.
I love that because one of my mentors tells me all the time, those who pay attention. And so there's a lot more investment in the sense of like not just the dollars that you're dishing out to be at these events or whatever, but what you are getting out of the events.
Yep.
What would you say are some of like the ways that you've learned in order to get some of those like knowledge nuggets or light bulb moments that have really made a difference?
Well, one, just even implementing the framework came because I attended an event and I said, that's interesting. My background was not a technician, right? I was an educator. So, and before that I was a military guy.
Okay.
So combination of two, say nothing about IT. But I can lead and I can run a business. And that's really coming to these events started making me smarter, wiser, more adaptive. I can say I'm going from the opposite end, right? Where a lot of the attendees are technicians and they're trying to be business people.
Yep.
And it's kind of like, I feel like, wow, it's just that peanut butter and chocolate moment where all of a sudden me as a business guy, I come and I talk to you.
What's wrong with jelly?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it depends on the type of jelly.
Yeah, for sure. But you know what I'm saying? Where I'm coming here, I'm having those conversations. They're asking me maybe more business specific questions.
Yeah.
Or like that's a crazy vision. Like, tell me more about it. And then for me, I'm like, what does that even mean? What's that technical aspect of that? And so we both learn from each other. And I think that's pretty unique. Yeah.
I mean, to your point, right? I think these are, and I'm going to go back into the platforms, right? Apple and Google, and a lot of our listeners are primary Google Workspace users, but supporting a Microsoft world, right?
Yeah.
And so my question to you on a business aspect, and maybe even to a sales aspect of the discussion of providing that value, for someone who wants to try and produce and become a Google Workspace providing business, and that's their driver. I have a good friend of mine who sold his MSP practice, and he was a true, fully all in Google Workspace for all his clients, Google domains, the whole shebang on that. And he says the only thing that ever had problems is when he introduced the Microsoft product into some of those things. But I go back to those that are providing Google Workspace or want to have that as a practice area. What are some experience stories that you had success upseating a Microsoft prospect that came in to understand the value of providing a Google Workspace experience so that it could be more intuitive for the value that they're trying to use it for?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a couple of customers in that direction who actually were Google Workspace users and then became Microsoft users. And sometimes that transition becomes a big frustration piece for them.
Yeah.
It's been fortunate for us where I don't try to steer anybody in one direction.
Okay.
So whether you're a Microsoft 365 user or you're a Google Workspace user, it doesn't drive how we're going to treat the customer. It doesn't even really drive like how if the conversation will be different.
Mm-hmm.
It really just drives the idea of saying what works best for you and your business. And so when we listen, because that's the biggest thing you want to do is to listen to your customer, and you hear the frustrations on one platform or the other, we come back and we have those conversations. So like, maybe this is a benefit to you. Maybe SharePoint is where you need to be, or let's demonstrate where Google Workspace can fit that.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden it's that comfortability of whatever platform will drive their business. But that's what a true consultant should do. So whenever you're having those kind of conversations where, I mean, you can steer it, you can drive it, you don't have to dictate it, right? And let the customer tell you by being comfortable with what your recommendations are.
Gotcha. You know, in regards to, you know, again, I want to highlight obviously the value for the audience, right? And those that are adhering to some of these platforms. You know, to me, I always found that there's always such, in my opinion, because I live in this Microsoft world, I don't see the amount of resources available for those trying to adopt a Google Workspace solution or, you know, trying to embrace an Apple ecosystem. You know, what have been some great either connections, events, resources that you found value for yourself or to your team, maybe on a technical aspect, to be able to improve the day-to-day and the value you're providing to your clients?
Yeah, so fortunate for us, we are what they call an Apple technical partner, which was formerly Apple Consultants Network. So we're vetted by Apple in order to deliver the services that we do. Some of the other things that I've actually done internally, so we're based out of Salt Lake City. We have 3 Apple stores in the area. And I've actually developed great relationships between all 3 stores.
Okay.
So that's another good starting point for us. Becoming a Google Workspace partner, we actually, one of the employees had his own Google Workspace partnership, right? And so at one point, I bought it from him in order to expand on it.
Okay.
And we're actually driving more business into the Google Workspace platform, like really solidly. And remember, I told you I'm a business guy, right?
Yeah.
So out of necessity, I started thinking to myself, why should we limit ourselves to just B2B? So I said, let me talk to MSPs and see if they want to buy licenses from us.
Okay.
Right. So you start to think a little bit differently on how you manage your licenses in time. And with Google Workspace, it's been, and Apple, I've gone to events like ACES, that's another Apple-specific event, making relationships with the stores, having a great relationship with Apple, right? And then we've actually even opened up our doors to partner with other organizations that are very Apple-specific and focused. It's a small community.
Sure.
Yeah.
Tightly knitted is what I've learned in regards to being able to process and move forward on there.
It's almost a cult. You said think different, and I immediately thought, wow, that's very Apple
that's
there.
That's what I used to have, right? It
Yeah.
said think different on the posters. I just see the guy, you know, you can be the guy with the glasses. I'm just not thin enough to be the other guy.
Oh, man. So, you know, in regards to, you know, as you kind of lead forward and adjusting and assisting your clients, right? It's always about business outcomes, right? And really trying to drive from there. Have you niched down on who you serve in regards to your end clients, or have you generalized ensuring that the support provided on any of that services or experience that you have to leverage those that come to you for help?
Yeah, so a great exercise we did, like any business should do, is right determining your ICP, your ideal customer profile, right? And we did that exercise for sure, mostly focusing on the idea of what customer is an Apple customer, right? It's all about the right fit, and then start tackling those industries. And sometimes there's a little bit of that, let's see if this actually works. And then a lot of times it's like organically you might get businesses that all of a sudden pop up and you're like, whoa, okay, maybe we didn't look at this industry and maybe we really should.
Has there been any industries that have outweighed one or the other as far as success for your company?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's a struggle with startups because it's not until they get funded that they really take off with the Apple platform, and then have those higher demands. And then real estate industry has been really successful for us.
Okay.
Yeah, and they like to use their Apple products, and we don't mind that.
You're like, not at all.
Not at all. So yeah, we've had a few of those kind of, and obviously people will see creative agencies, but
Right.
creative agencies also have a lot of their own stuff dialed in. So it's not always like I don't actively just pursue that
Sure.
that industry.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Especially when it came to, you talked about like trimming some of the fat in the business and gaining some efficiencies and things like that. Did you find that along with defining your ICP, you also lost customers along the way? Did you have to trim some of those?
So it was really interesting in that transition between partners. There became an opportunity that I had to go back to all the customers that we were engaging with and convert them. And I know this is huge in the MSP industry for newcomers and stuff. It's like, oh, I have all these customers that got me to where I'm at, but they're not a good fit anymore.
Yep.
Yeah. Have the conversation, steer it, right? And that did happen for me. And we did lose a few customers that, like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? The reality is, those were the ones that were consuming, 90% of your time. And it definitely gave us perspective saying, man, we really like who we're working with now. Yeah. And definitely have those conversations.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to trim it to let it grow, right? Like
Yeah, it wasn't just trimming the business.
Right.
I actually had to trim some customers too.
Yeah.
I can't even believe it's already almost at the end of the episode. We've been having all these conversations. I'll start off with a couple of rapid fire questions just to kind of get a better understanding. And for those that are listening, is there anything currently in either the Apple platform or the Google platform that excites not yourself, but your team to be able to implement to their end users to maybe either save themselves some time, cool, they get to do something cool with it that's going to be able to really drive some motivation to across the team, anything of that nature for the
100%. So we're an Iru shop. We have a great relationship with Iru, formerly Kanji. And one of the fun parts that we just did recently is we purchased a Vision Pro.
Okay.
Just so we can enroll it into the MDM and stuff. And they came back and were like, you guys have a Vision Pro, and so it was exciting for everybody all around. But it's those little things that get people motivated, and of course now I got, a tech staff member's like, hey Ed,
joining the team, the meetings on there.
Yeah, exactly. So those are really exciting. I mean, I wasn't in office when WWC happens, but we have food come in and everybody just sits and watches. Awesome. Yeah, we make an event, right? And we do the same thing with Google I/O, right? All those kinds of events. We do the same thing. So it really gives everybody that investment into the stuff they're going to work with, and so, that's our biggest one, like just having good times. And I asked my team, go see Apple, go have conversations with the Apple stores here. Yeah. And that's so awesome. They're just as invested as I am.
That's awesome. So obviously we're now in June, right? We have 6 months left in the year. Is there any initiatives that you either had took place or wish you had in the beginning of the year that you are going to kind of put in place or have the opportunity to put in place before the end of the year?
Yep. So with implementing Profit First, that was a big one because as I transitioned into being the owner, we had to make up some of those losses that we've taken on and some of the debts. So I've actually, this year, we're removing all of that.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been such a great year that we're able to now get out of that space and start looking forward.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so between that initiative and some of the other stuff I'm actually thinking about something I'm working on is taking the Google Workspace and segmenting. So now I can actually develop that to deliver more, not only to customers and our partners and so forth, but even the services. Maybe you leverage cloud services and other things down the road, where the MSP gets to be its own organic space as well.
My last question, and I'll turn it over to Nancy for final words, is, for any MSP that's out there, right? And I think the conversation here is being able to identify, optimize, and ultimately have your business deliver in the most best way possible. And sometimes being in the red could be an underwhelming, and could be under stress trying to figure that out. What would you say, either in words of encouragement or maybe an action item for someone that is maybe feels like they're a little bit over their head and they're just trying to figure out how to get back into the saddle and drive forward into profitability? What would be a tip or some words to kind of explain to them?
So, kind of told you I was prior military, right? And one of the things that I always used to say is the worst thing you can do is nothing at all. Sometimes doing nothing is doing something, right? But the worst thing you do is nothing at all. So when you see in the red, or I just don't feel like I have momentum. I even said the other day to someone, it's like, God, sometimes I feel like I have imposter syndrome, right? I'm in a tech industry, but I'm not a tech guy, right? I used to be a Apple certified trainer. It's not a tech guy. And you know what? Get over it. Move on. You are capable. You're smart. Do it, right? Just do it. It's a Nike slogan. That's what I would definitely tell people. Like, just think it through. Talk to people. Get engaged. People will help you. People want to help. Yeah.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us and
letting
me grab you to join us on here. And especially in your backyard. So
Totally, yeah.
Beautiful city, by the way. What would you say, especially being on the other side, right? Being the business guy, which I feel is such an advantage sometimes, comparatively speaking. What would you say to your counterpart, someone that is on the tech side, that is, looking to be the business guy now, or gal? What would you say to them is like the number one thing that they have to do in order to embody that?
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen it with so many other MSPs too. Embrace change. And that means you have to change. You can't always be the technician. You eventually have to trust. Trust is crucial. And I have tons of it with my team. So if you're the technician, you're the guy who loves to do, you got to dig down deep and say, can I trust to give these things up so that I can be a business owner? And if you can't make that transition, then maybe you need to find somebody else who can, so that you can keep doing what you love to do.
No, that's great. Ultimately, it's, as we talk about, perseverance, persistence, how to leverage and run a successful business. I think of two phrases. One, and you'll appreciate this because it's a military phrase: embrace the suck, and being able to doing that. And a story that reminds me of, like, you just got to get over, you got to do it, right? And there's a story that me and my good friend John Davinsky, former Marine, and so he always says, we always have this phrase, and we say to each other whenever there's a difficult situation, is monkey up. And where this comes from is there's a phrase or a bit of a wording is like, picture yourself as the third monkey on Noah's Ark, and boy, is it starting to rain. And so that's where it's in. For those that are not familiar, essentially there's pairs into Noah's Ark for it to save, and so being able to a fighting chance that you have to ensure that you get to where you have to go. So if you ever hear me say that phrase, that's what it means. But again, Ed, really appreciate you coming out here, sharing your story. I think there was a lot of great opportunities, a lot of great value that we have. And for all of you tuning in, we appreciate you watching and listening. If you feel free to watch the video podcast over on youtube.com/MSP Unplugged, like, subscribe, hit that notification button so that you're notified whenever a new episode is available. If you'd like to take us with you on the go, we're on all your favorite podcatcher apps. If you go to mspunplugged.com, you'll see the variety of podcatchers that we are available on. Some examples of those are Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify. And ultimately, one of my favorite things I always like to talk about recently, and that is our annual event, TechCon Unplugged, September 17th and the 19th at the Crown Plaza over in Rosemont, which is Chicago. So we look forward to seeing you there. Head over to techconunplugged.com, get your tickets today. And from all of us here, recording live at PAX Beyond 2026 in Salt Lake City, we will see you next time on MSP Unplugged.
Bye.